and you can just follow along there. Do you see my screen now with the slides, right? Okay. So do UI next. Why next? Before we get into what's going on and why yeah, before we get to what's going on, we have to understand why. So let me give you some historical context, and I'm pretty sure this will be very valuable for the questions in the agenda. So back in the days when Duo Chat was just a bunch of components, we decided that we have to use and abuse GitLab UI. That's what I call the GitLab UI era. Back in the days, there was a very limited resource of front-end engineers. Namely, it was just one front-end engineer, and anything would help us to move quickly. So the pros of keeping Duo, what we call now Duo UI, in the GitLab UI back in the days was it works with minimal resources. As I said, it was just one front engineer back then. It was very close to the design. So the GitLab UI was sort of the representation of the design. And we could piggyback the established production grade delivery of GitLab UI package without actually investing in building new delivery chain. It was a single source of truth to serve all environments, web IDs, web ID. So it was the intentional decision to have all the components be web-based, build web views in the IDs, and that way it would be beneficial to put everything into the GitLab UI to just serve all the environments. So that was great. That served its purpose. But then we hit the first important milestone in Duo Chat Live, namely the first experimental release. And then we figured out that there are some cons of keeping Duo UI in GitLab UI. So namely, the major thing was release blocking issues in unrelated parts of GitLab UI were blocking the release of Duo UI interface, Duo interface and Duo features. So we could not move as quick as we wanted, and we could in the AI space because we were blocked by other things unrelated to this. And again, the fact that really affected the speed of delivery through the GitLab UI was only the foundation group members could merge. This means that we had to always ping foundation group members in order to merge things. So that's the past. Oh, one more point, right? Stable or typical GitLab workflows didn't scale well for AI velocity. Again, this is kind of like the outcome of the first two. In AI, we are supposed to move really fast, really quick, and it's very prominent around important milestones like experimental launch of Duo Chat. And we could not move as quick as we wanted because of the first two limitations in this list. So the Duo, that's the point where we came to the conclusion that we have to take out Duo UI out of GitLab UI. And Yannick came up with this Duo UI package where technically we still piggyback the delivered chain of GitLab UI because we just copied over everything from GitLab UI. But we controlled how often we can release, and we were not bound to the breakages outside of Duo area. So the pros were improved delivery. We didn't need to rely on GitLab UI maintainers anymore. We were maintainers on our own. And then we improved velocity, releasing automatically several times a day. Technically, every merge request created a new release of Duo UI. But there were cons as well in this process. So the Duo UI now is still slow and prone to long delays delivery. It's pretty subpar developer experience still. And we will get deeper into these points now. Lack of customization and theming story. So let's talk about slow, prone to long delays delivery. Consumer projects don't get updated automatically. It's all about renovate bot. And as a result, Cases of not delivering Duo UI changes for more than a week. That's a bit scary because it's very easy to miss MRs from the Renovate bot, or the Renovate bot MR was assigned to people who were on PTO or even outside of Duo chat group, and people didn't really care about merging that as soon as possible. So that's still the case. It's better. The Renovate bot MRs now are assigned to front engineers in the AI org. Still, we have issues when things are not delivered for 3, 4 days from Duo UI. Subpar developer experience. What I mean about that here. When developing Duo UI, so you are in the context of the Duo UI package, if you don't remember GitLab UI utility classes by memory, you have to keep GitLab UI constantly opened in order to check what is the correct utility class, because we have so many of those that it's impossible to remember all of those. If you don't have a suitable utility class, which sometimes is the case, you just write proprietary CSS. That's why we have really long CSS file in Duo UI, because since after we branched off from GitLab UI, we rarely add utilities back to GitLab UI. We just put raw CSS into UI and off we go. Then, very important thing, and this is something that we overlook surprisingly in the AI stage, our own AI tools don't know about GitLab UI. Means when you need when you write utility classes, our code suggestions and code completions are prone to mistakes, hallucination, code completions, and code suggestions, because AI tools don't know much about GitLab UI. And then again, when new hires come, they have to learn GitLab UI and how to use GitLab UI. What are the utility classes? Not a big deal by any means, but still something to keep in mind, because this is not the typical front engineer tool. But then another thing, when debugging Duo UI, means when you need to debug Duo UI, for example, when it's integrated in the language server web view, so you need to debug it in the context of VS Code, let's say, either you should master Yelk or npm link, and none of those really work for me. I don't know how it is for everybody, but I've heard a lot of people complaining that it doesn't work as smooth as it should. So the workaround, which is very labor intensive, you tweak in Duo UI package on your local machine, you build it, and then you copy the output of dist and src folders over to your web view in language server, test this, and then rinse and repeat. It's very labor intensive task. And prior to the latest beta release of Duo Chat, we had to do a lot of these things. Lack of customization and theming story in Duo UI. It is kind of solved, or to be precise, hacked around with extending props on the components. And as a result, Duo Chat component now in Duo UI has 22 reactive props, 17 event listeners, and to top it off, we also have three slots to be able to customize Duo UI, Duo Chat. When Duo Workflow started working, again, that group needed high velocity. They needed to move fast, and Andrew and Fred won't let me lie about this. That was not very easy, and they just had to copy over things from Duo UI, keep them in the context of Duo Workflow, and customize to their to the purposes of their project. That's not very very convenient. All of a sudden, we have to support two seemingly similar things, but then at the end, we also have to schedule the things to unify the interfaces again. And Andrew and Lindsay are working on that right these days. Hopefully, I don't know, probably. So we diverge, and then we have to merge again at some point. But the funny side effect of this of the poor theming story is like, classes like this, GLBG Gray 10, which is supposed to be the utility class for gray, for light gray background. We set GL Duo Chat background CSS variable, and this one can be anything. So the utility classes completely lose their meaning in the context of Duo UI. Now, with that sort of outlined, the cons of the current Duo UI situation, let's talk about the future, the Duo UI next era, hopefully, which is the future. In the future, in preferably the near future, we have to truly master the quick delivery of the components to the consumer projects. We have to significantly improve developer experience, both for the development of Duo UI and for debugging Duo UI components in the consumer projects. And we have to improve and set the well-defined customization and theming story. This is to address those things that we have now with Duo UI. But there's also one more thing. We have to embrace AI tools. We have to make sure that AI actually helps us to develop Duo UI and to develop with Duo UI, namely in the consumer projects, rather than stand in a way. So this is the future. And I think that we are about to define it this way. So the move from GitLab UI to Duo UI was the evolutionary step. It was a natural move to take out GitLab UI, like Duo UI, Duo Chat UI components into a separate package, and then develop it alongside GitLab UI. But Duo UI to Duo UI next is gonna be a revolution. At least that's what we have to do, because all of the things in cons for Duo UI that I mentioned, they will bite us really hard when later this year when we are moving to the GA with Duo Agentic Platform, and we have to do something with those points. So we have to revolutionize the approach that we have here. Duo UI next. Again, I'm summarizing the things that we have to tackle with Duo UI next. Quick delivery, improved developer experience, customizations and theming story, and embracing of the AI tools. Now, how do I suggest we get there? And that's why I call this a revolution. Let's talk about the delivery. I suggest that the new delivery system of Duo UI we are going to move from NPM packaging to SHA-CN registry. Is there anybody who knows what the SHA-CN registry is? No. Okay. So, SHA-CN is, I can't even call it in UK on the blog, but it's been a while. It's been around for a while. But SHA-CN is technically a new approach in front-end development. So, and it comes with the registry. Technically, what is the SHA-CN registry? It's an anti-packaging distribution system with just CLI. So when you install SHA-CN, you don't install any NPM package that goes into your node modules. You install the CLI that allows you to pull in only the components that you really need in your project. And here is the things. It does pull the component into your consumer project. So consumer projects own the components. You don't need to wait for the release of a package of a component library. You don't need to wait for the updates in that component library. You own the component. It is in your consumer project, so you're absolutely free to update it whenever you want or whenever you need. The SHA-CN registry has clearly defined public API for a component library, something that we do not have for Duo UI or in general for component libraries. Public API that tells what components are possible to import and what are the dependencies for every component, how this is supposed to be working in your project. And SHA-CN registry allows for much easier development and debugging. So again, imagine you need to pull in Duo chat message component and like you have a problem with that component and you want to debug it. Instead of getting to do a UI, tinkering there, building the project, uh, copying files over to language server into the web view, and then going back and forth, you already have the chat message component in your web view in language server. So you just go there, set the debugger, you tinker with it, you fine tune it, and then most probably when you fix the problem, you can push it both to your consumer project and to Duo UI at the same time. You don't need to depend on Duo UI anymore. The improved developer experience. Here is where the revolution starts. So, as I said, instead of npm distribution, we are gonna use the SHA-CN registry. But SHA-CN is technically not only about distribution, it's much more about the components. So on the surface, it is the component library. So here is where the major changes come. I suggest we completely switch from GitLab UI to SHA-CN UI. The set of components is very comparable to GitLab UI. They look great, they look slick. We will talk about this a bit later. I suggest switch from Vue to Vue 3 because we are in the context of one particular package and we can do whatever we want there. JavaScript to TypeScript, finally. And then instead of GitLab UI utilities, we do not, since we're not going to use GitLab UI, we are going to rely purely on plain Tailwind utilities. Now, it sounds like a really, really big change, but I would like to explain every point of this. So switch from GitLab UI to SHA-CN UI. SHA-CN UI provides the theme agnostic components. It doesn't have any prefixed utilities like SHA-CN dash whatever, like we have GL dash whatever in GitLab UI. It is a very theme agnostic components built purely with Tailwind utility classes. It is accessibility first, so we remove a lot of headache when we build our interfaces about accessibility. All of the SHA-CN components are accessibility first. The SHA-CN UI is built for the customization. As I said, it comes with the standard Tailwind utility classes, and AI tools are well aware of Tailwind utilities. So you will benefit from code completion, code suggestion. When you work with the new components in Duo UI, you will get the suggestions, especially with some extensions in VS Code, which support working with Tailwind. Then you get a lot of benefits from this move. But the main point, and that's why the technology stack that I suggest is justified, is that SHA-CN UI is built with, technically it is built with React, but there is the official port to Vue 3. So it's built with Vue 3, TypeScript, and Tailwind. That's why the stack suggested here. Again, getting back to the delivery, if we switch to SHA-CN, both UI and registry, it will be much easier to develop and debug components because they are local in the consumer projects. Now, how can we also improve DX in Duo UI Next? Better fail-proof support via automated scripts. Right now in the Duo UI Next that I'm working with, there are two scripts. First one is create components. So it will create all the boilerplate for you, including the registry entry for SHA-CN. And we'll take a look at this later. It will just do all the right things for you so that you just go and fill out the gaps and build actual component instead of just copy pasting, figuring out what you need, what you don't. This will improve the flow into creating new components. But then another script that I'm working on is health check. So it explicitly checks it ensures that the registry, the SHA-CN registry that we built for Duo UI, and the components, the actual components that we have, they match and they have proper development dependencies, proper registry dependencies. We will talk about this in a bit. So automated fail-proof support for engineers while working with Duo UI so that it would be harder to mess up, harder to fail, and it would be easier to go fast with Duo UI because, again, Duo UI has to follow the idea of us being in the startup mode in the AI organization, and it has to allow for very quick turnaround, very quick movements. So customizations and theming in Duo UI next. Theming, as I said, it is suggested to be pure Tailwind. So Tailwind and CSS variables are going to be the means of customizations and theming. I will show the example later. And it's much simpler because technically, as I said, Duo UI now has no understanding of theming. It's all about sending properties and then fine-tuning with classes. But there is a really cool thing here. If we rely on Tailwind and CSS variables, it allows, and Shadcn and components, it allows for clear separation between components and themes. What it means is that front-end engineers can build the interfaces without thinking about theming, colors, and all these things, while designers can play with the theme outside of the components. Just update the CSS variables while the components are being developed, and these things do not interchange. So components will automatically pick up the theme from CSS variables via the Tailwind utility classes. So it will happen automatically. The customizations, Shadcn delivery system here. Local components, as I mentioned a couple of times, can be customized in any way one needs because they are local to the project. And then if that customization is beneficial for the overall component library, you can just copy paste it back to Duo UI and push the new merge request to merge it, or you keep it for the consumer project. Important thing to understand is that you can update your local component from the registry later on if you think that your local component is lagging behind what is in Duo UI, just like you would update the version of the NPM package. This is a very important thing for designers. So there is a Shadcn UI for Figma. It is not free, it's one-time payment, but that allows to design interfaces with Shadcn components. So technically, all the components library, so things that we spend time for in with GitLab UI, exists for Shadcn UI as well. And it comes with a dedicated plugin to generate code and export theme settings from Figma to code. So again, it creates a completely different workflow for designers, but contrary to how it works with GitLab UI, where designer's workflow is one thing and what happens in the code is another thing, these things can be interchanged because we can get code from Figma for the Shadcn, then just designers can create merge requests to update the theme, for example, for that or another environment. This makes things, again, it preserves things distributed, so front end here, design here, but it creates the bridge between these two things. And again, this is quite important, I think, as well. Not the cornerstone thing, but building Duo UI next with Shadcn can help bringing the North Star design and iterate on it much quicker, because we will have all the components to us available to us. We don't need to fine-tune the components. Everything is just going to be glued together really nice. But of course, since those components are not following our North Star design, there might be some compromises and we need to iterate on the North Star. But again, if, for example, we decide to use Shadcn UI Figma, then we will be able to do this quite quickly. But again, I'm not a designer. I just try to figure out where we can optimize the processes. Now let's talk about the AI tools. AI tools know next to nothing about GitLab UI. So it's prone to hallucinations. And that's why we always have to consult GitLab UI when we add anything into our Duo UI project. However, they are trained reasonably well on the Tailwind, on the standard Tailwind, and combined with the Tailwind CSS IntelliSense extension in VS Code, it becomes significantly faster. Actually, it might even exist for JetBrains as well. It becomes significantly faster to work with utility classes and much easier to avoid custom CSS and grow that CSS that we have in Duo UI with custom styles, overriding color utility classes with CSS variables. Vue 3 is 5 years old. Think about it. It's 5 years old and we are still on Vue 2. AI tools are keen on helping with Vue 3 right away instead of Vue 2. You have to, if you want help on Vue 2, you have to explicitly specify that, well, you are working with Vue 2 and AI tool will just feel very sad about you. But that's it. Like, it is 5 years old. So we have to start using Vue 3 at least somewhere. We are in the process of upgrading. We have the working group, but we are still on Vue 2. TypeScript. This is one more piece of the puzzle, right? I said we have to move from JavaScript to TypeScript. TypeScript is useful not only for humans, but also for AI tools to help those better understand the structure and expectations of the modules. That, again, solidifies the way we present code to the AI tools, and they will be able to respond and give you help much quicker. Again, the technology stack, just after all of this information, what I'm suggesting, npm package is gone. We are going to ShadCN registry. Instead of GitLab UI, we're using ShadCN UI. It is MIT license, so no problem there. Vue 2 to Vue 3, JavaScript to TypeScript, and GitLab UI utilities are gone in favor of the standard Tailwind utilities. Of course, there are challenges, and I'm pretty sure you've been asking yourself, how on earth are we going to do this? So the main challenge is new technology and approach. Technically, most of front-end engineers are kind of familiar with Vue 3 because, as I said, we are for several years we are in this Vue 2 to Vue 3 migration thing. We also have some tests that are testing our components for Vue 3 compatibility. TypeScript, considering this, we are talking about Duo UI, all the front-end engineers working with Duo Chat and Duo Agentic Platform work with TypeScript for a while, so no problem there. The only piece of the puzzle that people need to familiarize themselves with is ShadCN, really. Now, theming. The themes have to be created, of course. But again, we have a good Tailwind basis in GitLab UI because GitLab UI realized this Tailwind need. And we also have some basis for Tailwind in GitLab UI that we can port to Duo UI, I guess. But we'll take a look at that. Icons. This is a bit of a bummer. ShadCN uses the Lucid icons by default. But there is a mechanism to switch this to our GitLab SVGs if we really need to, and I suppose we do. So this has to be done, but it's not impossible. It just has to be done. But then, pretty much, let's talk about the elephant in the room. We are talking about the new technology stack. Any front-end engineer probably would be excited. Vue 3, TypeScript, fantastic. Yes, but there is a problem. Consumer projects have to support the tech stack, right? So you cannot pull in Vue 3 component into Vue 2 project and just expect it to continue working, or the same thing with the TypeScript. In this regard, though, web is the main problem because for IDEs, it's not a big issue. For IDEs, we can build the dedicated Vue 3 TypeScript web view and just use things there, build Duo Agentic platform there, and then just switch the routing to that new web view instead of the old Vue 2 based one. So The main problem is the web. And unless we solve this thing for web, there is this sync challenge where we have to sync changes between Vue 2 and Vue 3 versions for some time. And some works could be mitigated by automated tools to some degree. We can work on that. I also have some ideas, but manual work is inevitable. We can notify users in CI when there is a push to Vue 2 component, notify that, well, you have to map the same for the Vue 3 version, or when the changes are only for the Vue 3, we have to notify user that you have to push changes to Vue 2 version as well. Something like this, but still some manual work should probably be expected. So before we get to the demo, let's